Hey there, pharmacy owners. Dr. Lisa Faast here, owner of Diversify RX and host and curator of the Pharmacy Profit Summit. And I want to talk to you today about employee training. Might be no other thing that's more important in terms of being able to scale and grow your pharmacy without headaches than training your employees. I have trained all kinds of employees in all kinds of businesses, and it is the linchpin. It is like the cornerstone of what separates amazing, fantastic pharmacies or other businesses into mediocre, average, or terrible businesses and pharmacies. And so how can you systematically train your employees so that one, when they're new, you get them trained and they have that foundational level training. And then two, you're constantly going back to your current employees and making sure they're still doing things correctly, the way that you want them. They're learning new things when they need to learn. And, it could just get quite confusing. It can get quite busy. It doesn't seem important. And then next thing you know, 5 years down the road and, your employees aren't doing what you want them to do. Like that happens. I've been there myself. I've experienced kind of both sides of that. And so one of the reasons I'm talking to you about employee training is, I have a system of employee training. I'll go over that with you, give you a little kind of framework that I use for employee training, but also to tell you that if you have employees and you want help in training them and you want to make it easy, that is an entire session that we are going to be doing at the upcoming Pharmacy Profit Summit in March in Dallas at the Omni. We have an independent pharmacy manager. He's not the owner. He's the manager. He's the one that has to do all the training. We have him presenting on his method and how he integrated that with technology to make employee training, tracking, retraining, all the things that you need to do, and really made it simple, like super, super simple. And dare I say easy, because he is going to be sharing all of his stuff with the people who are in the room as attendees. So you won't have to create things from scratch. Yay, because that's the worst part. What we're doing is we're kind of combining his technology use and the things that he's already created, along with kind of like how my methodology for employing trainees. And we're going to create this bombastic session at the Pharmacy Profit Summit that will make all attendees, ticket holders there, just make it super easy for employee training. So what is my framework? What is my kind of like way of doing this? I like to break employee training down. Now, this is from the perspective of like new employees. How you go back and retrain and do other employees is going to be a little bit different. But most of you are concerned about training new employees. And to be honest, you can certainly put all your current employees through this process almost like they're new. They could probably go through it maybe a little faster, but every time I've done that with current employees and kind of put them through like a new process, I inevitably find they're doing something not how I want it done. Maybe it's not, technically incorrect. Sometimes it is flat out incorrect, but sometimes it's just not the way that I want as the business owner for it to happen. So here's kind of my step-by-step process for creating a training program. If you're not going to the summit, you don't want it easy, you want to do it kind of the old-fashioned way. Here's kind of my stepology process. One, look at each position in your pharmacy, not the people, right? And this is important, especially those of you with smaller teams. You probably have one person straddling two, maybe even three positions. You might have a cashier that is a cashier and is an inventory order and does deliveries. Okay, so you don't want to think about Susan that does those three things. You want to think about a cashier. You want to think that separately from maybe somebody who's doing OTC inventory, and you want to think about that separately from somebody who's doing delivery drivers. So you want to think of positions, not people. Write down all the positions in your pharmacy. All right. I might have a compounding technician because I do compounding, but you don't have a compounding technician. You might have a delivery person because you do deliveries and, I don't. So there's not just one magical, list of all the positions, but we certainly can help you with that if you need some iterations or some examples. But just write down all the positions, all the jobs that need to be done in your pharmacy. Then underneath each one of those jobs, just spaghetti on the wall, everything that job needs to know how to do. Do they need to know how to answer the phone? Do they need to know how to send a fax? Do they need to know how to take the trash out and put it in the dumpster? Do they need to know how to change a light bulb? Like whatever it is, everything that job needs to know how to do, right? Some jobs are going to have longer lists than others. Some are going to have more complicated tasks than others, but just put it down, everything that job needs to do. Then what I look at is, once I have my list, my brain dump of spaghetti on the wall, then I look at what do they need to know first? Like what's kind of the timeline? Like a cashier, they might need to know how to send a fax, and they might need to know how to answer the phone, and they might need to know how to ring somebody up. All three important things. But which one do they need to know first? Well, in my world, my cashiers, they probably need to know how to answer the phone first. So answer the phone would come before knowing how to ring a customer out, which would come before knowing how to send a fax. Okay, like just a quick example. So take your spaghetti on the wall, came out in any order, and then just rearrange it into kind of a prioritization. All right. So they need to learn first, they need to learn next, they need to learn next, all the way to like, this is the, kind of the last things they need to learn. That way, the next step, what you're going to do is you're going to divide it into 4 sections. All right. 4 sections, you can do it even. You can do maybe the first thing they need to learn is really complicated. And so maybe the first section in terms of workload only has 3 things, but the second section has 8 things. So I like to make it try to even by like workload or like burden of learning, if you will, not necessarily by the task. Taking out the trash and knowing how to dispose of it properly probably happens pretty quick, as opposed to learning how to type a new prescription in a PMS system. So split it up into 4 equal sections by burden of like how hard it is to learn those things. Then what happens is each one of those sections becomes your weekly training for that employee. And who's doing the training might be you, the pharmacy owner or the pharmacy manager. It also might be another employee. And I will say, before you have another employee train an employee, you want to make sure that they're trained properly as well. So at some point, this is going to flow back to the pharmacy owner for like the first time, because you want to make sure that whoever's training the trainee is also trained in how you want it to be. I know it's kind of the mouthful there. All right. So you have your list, you have it separated. First section, because that's high priority, they need to learn that first. That's what they learn in week 1. So the way that I do my training weeks with new employees is Mondays and Tuesdays, they shadow, they follow around. They see everybody do it. They see the proper way to do it. They experiencing it. They're not necessarily responsible for doing it themselves. Some things it might be easy for them to dive in and just, take that on. But Mondays and Tuesdays are for asking questions, shadowing, make sure they understand what it is they're supposed to be doing it and how they're supposed to be doing it. Then Wednesday, Thursdays are for them to do it themselves, like for them to practice, figure it out. If they run into things, if they don't remember something, to ask questions, get the help they need, kind of refine that ability themselves. And then on Friday is test day, right? Tests always come on Friday, at least when I was in school. And so then now on Fridays, the trainee shows their trainer how they do the things. That's why it's so important. 1, your trainer knows how you want it done and how to do it themselves, because they have to teach it and then have to ensure that it was done correctly. So at the end of the week, you have your little checklist of all the things that they needed to learn that week, and the training, approved. Oh, you did this little thing wrong. Here's this little thing, approved, whatever. And then they're trained on that things for the week. And then the second week, you go and do the next thing, the next group. And it actually makes training fairly systematic, fairly not overwhelming. If you try to teach what I see so often, and what I was definitely guilty of, was just like blowing a fire hose of water at them. It's like anything that came up. Oh, you need to know how to do this. Oh, you need to know how to do that. Oh, let me show you this. Let me show you that. And it was just chaotic. And the next person who came and got trained, they would get trained completely different. Now, it might be the same things, but it certainly wasn't in the same order. It wasn't with the same importance. And there just was no consistency. So what I have found with this system, of this framework, is it creates consistency. It creates an easy checklist of like, hey, yep, you did that perfectly right. Nope, you didn't. Here's what you didn't do. You forgot to, mark it with the yellow pen, or whatever. And that way it gives them systematic training over a month. And so onboarding a new pharmacy employee, a month is okay. Now, again, some positions that you have, like our delivery drivers, we could do this with delivery drivers in 1 to 2 weeks, because they just didn't have that many different responsibilities. Their job was very repetitive. Once they learned, how to deliver, how to get a signature, what to do with the patient's not there, like that kind of stuff, like they just had a very finite number of things. They just repeated them a whole lot. So you might have positions that don't necessarily need a full 4 weeks. That's a-okay. But you can get pretty much any position, even pharmacists, technicians, done in 4 weeks, so that they feel comfortable that you have a onboarding and training process. And in a month, they're fairly well trained in your pharmacy. Like, there's always going to be things. There's always going to be outliers and crazy situations and whatnot that come up. But at the end of 4 weeks, you have a pretty full functioning employee that can really contribute to your pharmacy. And that's what's really it's about. And so if you feel like your employees are a little chaotic, they may not know exactly what to do or how to do it, or they're doing it differently, Susan does it this way and Tom does it this way, this might be something for you to go through. Now, I will say, I caution you, doing this initially, there is a lot of work. You or your manager has to come up with all these tasks. You have to come with your positions, your different jobs that need to be done. You need to throw all the ideas of the spaghetti into the list. You have to prioritize them and when you want them to learn. Like, there is definitely some lift here. But the really cool thing is you only have to do it once. Unless something drastically changes with your position, then you only have to do it once, and then you get a rinse and repeat on that. And so that's my framework. That's kind of like my old school way of doing it. If you want a new tech savvy way that is super easy, you do not want to miss Austin Hook's presentation at the Pharmacy Profit Summit. He is going to be explaining exactly how he uses technology and exactly how he keeps track of a boatload of employees in lots of different positions, how he uses that technology, and then he's going to share everything that he has created with that for people that have only bought a ticket and you have to be in the room. So that's the deal. So if you don't have your ticket, go to pharmacyprofitsummit.com. If you have any questions at all, feel free to call me, chat me. Happy to answer them. And I hope to see you in March in Dallas. And I hope this was helpful for you and giving you some information on how to train your employees, whether they're new or old. And if you have any follow-up things, just again, post it below in the comments and we'll talk to you again later. Bye-bye.